here goes nothing. Well, hey y'all, welcome back to Doug's Cars. Got some more Rover rescue action for you. I'm just picking up my Blue Good Black 94 County LWB here at Sports Car Workshops. I had some work done on it. Needs a bit more muffler work still, unfortunately, so it's still a bit noisy. I did have the exhaust manifold gaskets done. I just wasn't gonna try to do that myself, so here goes nothing. Fires right up. Yeah, I can hear the blow in the exhaust still. So let's take this home. Power steering works fine now. Feels really good. So the problem with that was actually the hose that I got had like 4 threads too short on the part that screwed into the power steering pump itself. It needed like 4 more threads, and for whatever reason this hose was just manufactured incorrectly, I guess. It didn't have that on there, and so it just never worked, which is unfortunate because now I'm out the money for that hose that was supposed to be specifically for this vehicle, and it certainly is not. It's just frustrating because it was not cheap, and neither was the new one. So those things have been fixed now. I can use my power steering again. I can drive the vehicle without worrying about it freaking there's Troy, that's funny, without it becoming more of a problem. And so, if you saw my last video when I drove this here, I was pretty anxious the whole time. For one thing, I'm driving this thing without power steering and all this other stuff. And I was really anxious about getting the vehicle to the shop. And I'm not as anxious about getting it back now that I know the power steering's working and all, but it's getting towards rush hour. A lot more traffic out, and I'm hoping things are fine. The battery's nicely charged now. Seems to be running okay. So I'm just gonna be doing this, making sure it gets home. I was thinking too, this is the quintessentially British vehicle. Not the Mini Cooper, not the Range Rover. This is mildly luxurious and royal, but not too much like a Range Rover or like a Rolls Royce that's just, you know, way above what normal people can get. It still coddles you a little bit, but you know, it's got the wood and the leather seats, and everything's just a little bit not quite there. I don't know. I don't know if I'm describing this correctly. Maybe I didn't formulate my thought just well enough, but it really does make me feel like this is the quintessential British vehicle. It's meant to go through nasty weather and in terrible terrain, but also drive in some of the most cosmopolitan places in the world, like London. And that's exactly what this thing does. It does all those things well. So that's my thought process on that. I don't know whether you agree with me or not, but that's what I have to say about that. The other thing I had them do, I had gotten new bushings for my rear anti-roll bar because they had just like melted out almost. But it turns out the end links were actually the problem, and so those have been replaced as well. I could have done it myself, but I was already there. It was so cheap. And the other thing that this was done was up on the rack, because it's in a location that's harder to get to unless you can jack this up and take a wheel off, is the fuel filter, which has been replaced. So now I have a usable fuel filter, because the one that was on there still said like Land Rover on it, so I have no idea how old that was. And I have a feeling that was causing some of the issue with stalling, was that there just wasn't enough fuel getting to the engine, because it was going through that nasty old fuel filter, and it was disgusting, I'm sure. I saw it when it came out of the vehicle, it looked okay out exterior-wise, and yet maybe it was replaced with a factory part, but I mean, honestly, I would have done it earlier. I thought it was gonna be something that I was gonna do myself, and it just didn't end up happening. So while they had it on the lift doing other things, I was like, throw a fuel filter on that, please. And they did, and I'm so glad. It actually seems to be, knock on wood, running a little bit better right now. So that's, unfortunately, there's one other small issue involving the cooling system. That hose I replaced, and if you watched my video when I drove this to the Outer Banks, I blew the upper cooling rad hose, which has a bung in it for a temperature sensor. And course, it didn't fail anywhere else in the hose, like at the, at either of the ends. It failed there, where that was like part of the radiator hose. So anyway, I'm toying with taking this down. If it's going to be running well, I'm going to drive it around a little bit once I get that hose replaced and see how it's doing, and try to figure out whether I want to drive this down there for that long weekend that I'm planning on being down there, which would be kind of cool. I've got a buddy moving in a couple weeks, and got the seat folded down, so this can maybe be used for some of that too. But again, I really need to run this by a muffler shop. I'm just not going to do it today. That's just not in the cards for today. And have them fix that middle box. That's where all the noise is coming from. It's really not connected at either end. It's pulled out one of the hangers. Some of this may or may not have been caused by, I don't know, rock crawling at the Mid-Atlantic Rally back in October. Because it was already noisy, but it was also coming from the engine, and now it's coming from underneath the vehicle. And there's really no way to fix that without just removing those things. And this shop could have done it, but it's just so much easier to take to a muffler shop where they can fab these things up. They have the parts in stock. They know what they're doing as far as fixing random exhaust systems, because a car repair / restoration shop is probably going to install all new parts, and I don't need a full exhaust system on this. It's not worth it. So much money to do. And then also they can just put in a muffler and weld it in, and that's what they do all day long. So I could be in and out of there for fairly inexpensive, and that's the key. Is I'm trying to keep my costs down on this. And yes, I paid a significant amount of money today for the things I had done, but if it makes my peace of mind and knowing that this vehicle will operate that much better, then yeah, that's what I want to do. So maybe, let's say another $60 to $100 for them to fix that up and get this fairly silent, so I'm still not waking up my neighbors. That's my goal, is to be able to run this, to charge the battery up and stuff like that. Even if I'm not driving it somewhere, I want to be able to run this once in a while, keep that battery charged, and not have to worry about my neighbors complaining about something what idles like a 70 Camaro with glass packs. And I mean, it is still kind of chuffing along there and shaking the vehicle a bit. So, but it's a fun ride, and I'm actually almost home now, which is great, because I have so much less stress and anxiety than when I drove this vehicle over there last Tuesday. It's been a little over a week since I brought it in, not because they were backed up or anything, but just because I said, take your time. And I mean, it is just so much nicer to be able to know that this is running fine. So I'm guessing part of the issue was that fuel filter that was, if not original, was definitely probably 15 years old, and who knows what kind of junk was in that. And that's my only sadness, is I wasn't there to see what it was like when they took it off and to see what came out of it. Because I know when we took Troy's out, I believe, and the silver one with the rusty hood, and like black gunk poured out of it. It was one of the funniest things I'd ever seen come out of. I mean, I've changed fuel filters before, but like as routine maintenance, not as, this has not been done because this has been sitting in a field since, the first Bush administration, basically. So yeah, I am almost home, and I am very glad for that. So once I pull this up the driveway, I'm gonna go ahead and pop the hood and show you all that coolant leak. Once again, if you have any, if you know of anything that you see or hear in this vehicle that you know the answer to, because again, I'm not a Range Rover person. This is the first one I've ever owned. I always liked them, but I've never had one before. And the other folks I work with who have their Rovers too, they may have a little bit more experience than me, but not a whole lot. These are not vehicles that we've owned before. So I love getting comments. I know people mentioned the ignition amplifier, and I think I'm gonna replace that too. But yeah, I mean, this is great. I'm on my street now. How wonderful is that? All right, next stop, the coolant line dripping. Stay tuned, like that. All right, well, I hopped out. You can definitely hear the exhaust now, and it's coming from that right there. I don't know if you can hear me over it, but you can see blowing the pine needles down there too. So yeah, that's the part that needs to be fixed. Let's pop this up right here. And the coolant's actually leaking from there, although I don't currently see any. Well, there's a little there on the dizzy cap. But other than that, I really I don't see any. So that's good, because it's not really leaking much, and it means I can hold off on getting that hose really. Or at least call them and see if they'll warranty that out for me. So anyway, I'm so glad that I made it back without incident. I thought I would, but well, here's your daily dose of Rover rescue, or weekly, let's say. I've got plenty more things planned to do with this vehicle, and we have those other Range Rovers that still need some help. So once again, I'm really appreciative of all of the new followers. I'm like this close, maybe this close now, maybe a little closer to 1,000 followers, which has been my goal for this year. Oh, I'd love to have 1 million followers, but let's face it, that's not going to happen. So, but 1,000 followers would be great. And so if you're watching these videos and you're enjoying them and you don't follow me, please hit that subscribe button, like the videos, comment on the videos, and keep watching Doug's Cars. I really appreciate it.